There are moments in life when we become strangers to ourselves. We gaze into the mirror, seeking answers in our reflection, wondering if the world sees us, hears us, desires us, or merely passes us by. But attractiveness is not born in the surface. It arises from the depths. It is the silent radiance of the inner world pressing through the skin, the eyes, the voice, and even the silences. It is not a mask worn for others. It is a presence that cannot be denied. If you have doubted yourself, if you felt invisible in a noisy world, let these signs remind you. You are more captivating than you think. When you enter a room and people glance in your direction, when their posture subtly changes, when silence shifts for a moment before resuming, these are not random events, nor are they trivial. There is an energy that moves before words, before gestures, before even your awareness of it. That energy is you. There is something deeply magnetic about the way you carry yourself without trying, the way your presence alters the atmosphere slightly without demand or performance. Many people believe that to be attractive is to constantly be seen, to dazzle, to dominate the space with sound or spectacle, but the opposite is often true. Those who are truly attractive rarely need to announce themselves because their very being has already done it. There is a frequency to your presence that others unconsciously register. They may not always know what it is. They may call it vibe or aura or something elusive they can't quite name. But what they are feeling is the result of years of inner formation, quiet strength, and emotional awareness that has settled into the way you stand, the way you look, the way you remain composed when others scramble for validation. That quiet confidence, even when you don't feel particularly confident, radiates from something deeper than mood. It comes from your refusal to pretend, your ability to inhabit your own space without apology, your quiet knowing that you do not have to become someone else to be worthy of the attention you naturally receive. You may not notice the impact you have because you are used to it. You may think the glances you receive are mere politeness, or that others fidget because they are distracted, but the truth is that many are adjusting to the frequency of you. They sense something they can't place, an authenticity, a groundedness, a strange invitation to feel something deeper, and it interrupts their normal rhythm. That's the magnetism of your existence in motion. You don't need to try harder. You don't need to speak more loudly. You don't need to conform. Your attractiveness lives in the way your presence commands, without force, in the way others feel more awake in your company, in the way you walk into a space not to be seen but to simply be, and still, without trying, you are seen. There is a rare kind of beauty in being the person others feel safe around, the one they unexpectedly confess their secrets to in quiet moments, the one who somehow makes strangers feel understood without effort. If you've ever found yourself sitting next to someone who suddenly begins revealing the wounds of their past, the hidden fears they've never spoken aloud, or the dreams they've kept buried under layers of shame, you are carrying something extraordinary. It's not that you asked, it's not that you pushed, it's not that you even intended to receive what they offered. It simply happened, because something in you told them they could. There is a silent language to safety, a subtle emotional vibration that only certain people emit, and you are one of them. Without realizing it, your presence has become a mirror for the unseen, a kind of sanctuary for pain that has nowhere else to go. People do not pour their hearts out to just anyone. They are drawn to you not for what you show on the surface, but for what they feel in your depth. You may not see it in yourself because it feels so natural, but others are profoundly moved by your ability to hold space without judgment, to witness without needing to fix, to be present without demanding anything in return. That is a rare form of attractiveness, one that cannot be bought, faked, or manufactured. It emerges only in those who have done their own inner work, who have faced the darkness and chosen not to become it, who have sat with their own silence long enough to hear the voices no one else wants to listen to. That kind of depth is magnetic in a world addicted to distraction, and people, whether consciously or not, gravitate to it with an almost instinctual pull. You may find it exhausting sometimes, wondering why you always seem to be the one others lean on, why people open up to you so quickly, why you are often the container for confessions, even in passing moments. But know this: their trust is not accidental. Their vulnerability is not misplaced. You are seen in ways you may not see yourself. Your ability to receive without judgment, to listen without interruption, to hold pain without fear, these are not just emotional gifts. They are reflections of the deep, quiet attractiveness that lives at the very core of who you are. When you are often misunderstood, when people misinterpret your silence as arrogance or your thoughtfulness as distance, it is rarely because you are unclear. It is usually because you are more complex than the boxes they are trying to place you in. There is something about you that defies the ordinary roles, the surface expectations, the labels that make others feel safe in their assumptions. This misunderstanding is not a flaw. It is a quiet signal that you carry layers, that your personality is not fully visible at first glance, that your presence is not one that can be consumed or summarized quickly. Attractiveness, in its deepest form, is often mistaken for mystery or contradiction, because the world is more comfortable with simplicity than with truth. You do not make sense to people who have only ever known masks, who expect a smile to always mean happiness, or a quiet mood to mean disinterest. When you move through life with emotional depth, with thoughts that spiral inward instead of outward, when your energy does not beg for attention but simply holds its own place, people may not know what to do with you. They may find you intense, too much or too little all at once. But this is only because your presence demands a kind of attention they are not used to giving, one that requires them to look closer, to pause, to feel instead of just reacting. Being misunderstood is a painful but powerful sign that you are not performing the version of yourself that others are comfortable with. You do not shrink to fit. You do not exaggerate to please. You are not decorating your personality for acceptance. That makes you unforgettable, even when they cannot articulate why. And often people walk away from encounters with you feeling something stirred within them, something they don't fully understand, and instead of sitting with that discomfort, they label you as confusing. But you are not confusing. You are layered. And in a world that fears its own depth, you become the mirror that reflects what they are not ready to face. Attractiveness lives in this truth. When your soul cannot be reduced to an aesthetic, when your being forces people to reconsider what presence truly means, when others are left feeling something profound they cannot name, you are not misunderstood because you are less. You are misunderstood because you are more. You don't overshare, you don't broadcast every thought or feeling, and still you linger in people's minds long after they leave the conversation. This is the quiet power of mystery, the kind that doesn't come from hiding, but from choosing to guard your essence, not offering it to everyone, but allowing it to be discovered by those who are patient enough to look beyond the surface. There's an elegance in the restraint you embody, a magnetism in your silence that calls people in without explanation. You aren't detached, you aren't cold, but you hold something back, not out of fear, but from an inner wisdom that knows your worth doesn't need to be proven or performed. You allow curiosity to breathe, and in doing so, you become someone people wonder about, someone they remember in the spaces between noise and distraction. It isn't that you are playing hard to get or hiding anything. It's that your inner world is so rich, so textured, that it cannot be flattened into casual conversation or shallow connection. You give glimpses, not explanations. You allow space, not pressure. And in that space, others project their own curiosity, their own longing, their own questions, because you have not rushed to fill every silence with answers. that absence becomes presence, that quiet becomes a language of its own. You might not always notice how magnetic this is because you are simply being yourself, but the way you move in a room, the way you listen, the way your words come with intention rather than impulse, it sets you apart. People are drawn to you because you allow them to feel mystery again, something sacred in a world that spills everything too quickly, that reveals too much without revealing anything real. In your restraint is an invitation to depth, and those who crave more than momentary attention sense it immediately. They may not be able to say why they feel different around you, why they want to know more, why you haunt their memory after only a brief interaction, but it's because you are not trying to be seen. You simply are. You allow yourself to remain a question, and in that question, others find themselves waking up to their own unexplored places. That is a form of beauty the world doesn't always recognize, but it is beauty all the same. There is something undeniable in the way your gaze lingers, in the stillness of your expression that seems to see beyond the moment, beyond the mask, beyond the words others speak. People feel it without understanding it, and some cannot hold it for long. They shift their eyes away, not because of rudeness, but because something in them becomes exposed in your presence. It is not that you judge them, but that your gaze seems to bypass all the layers they have carefully constructed. You do not try to intimidate, and yet others sometimes say you are intense, that your eyes are too honest, that your face reveals too much, even when you are silent. This is not a flaw. This is not a problem to fix. This is one of the most deeply rooted forms of attractiveness. The ability to be fully present, fully awake, and fully unafraid to meet another human being in the space where masks fall away. In your eyes, people glimpse themselves, often in ways they weren't ready for. You see their discomfort, not as yours to carry, but as a quiet reflection of what your presence stirs in them. There is no need to soften or shrink this quality, no need to dim what is simply truth expressed through your being. Others might not know how to describe it, but they will remember the way you looked at them, the feeling that you saw something they could not hide, and it will stay with them long after the interaction ends. You might wonder why people react so strongly to you, why some avoid eye contact or seem nervous around you, even when you say little. But this reaction is a signal that your authenticity challenges what is false. You are not performing, and in a world trained to reward performance, that feels both unsettling and unforgettable. The depth in your expression is not something you control or create. It is the natural result of the way you live, the way you think, the way you feel life fully, even when you don't speak it aloud. That energy, carried in your face, your eyes, your posture, sends a message that you are not here to entertain, but to witness, to reflect, to connect without illusion. And that kind of presence, subtle yet undeniable, is a form of beauty that cannot be manufactured. There are moments when people treat you in ways that don't quite match the energy you've given them. Moments when their reactions feel exaggerated or strangely personal, as if you've stirred something in them without intending to. You might notice they become defensive, overly attached, distant without reason, or unexpectedly admiring. And the truth is, this often has little to do with what you've done, and everything to do with what you represent to them. You carry a presence that acts like a mirror, and most people are not ready to see what it reflects. They look at you and project their stories, their wounds, their desires, their fears, all onto the space you hold. When you speak, it echoes in places they've tried to keep silent. When you listen, it invites a kind of openness they're not always comfortable with. You become, unknowingly, a stage on which others place their unfinished narratives. They assign you roles based on their history, not because you asked for it, but because your energy touches something unconscious in them. This can be both beautiful and confusing. Beautiful because it means you awaken something deeper, confusing because you may be blamed for emotions you didn't create. Some will be drawn to you with an intensity that feels disproportionate, others will push you away without cause, and neither reaction is about your worth. It is about the force with which you stir the hidden within them. That kind of emotional impact is a powerful indicator of attractiveness, one that goes far beyond the physical or the external. You are not here to be neutral or invisible. You carry a presence that demands people reckon with something real. It may be their longing for connection, their fear of vulnerability, their admiration of your authenticity, or their envy of your wholeness. And because these feelings arise without invitation, they often get misplaced. But the truth is, you have become a living symbol for something they have not yet integrated within themselves. You didn't ask for this role, but it is given to those who have learned to live without a mask, to stand in the fullness of their being without pretending. That kind of presence creates ripples, and those ripples often return as projections. You are not responsible for what others place upon you, but you are allowed to recognize the power you carry in simply being who you are. There is a quiet truth in the way children and animals respond to you, a kind of instinctive recognition that bypasses language, appearances, or performance. They are the most honest mirrors of presence, for they are untouched by social conditioning, unimpressed by status, and immune to superficial charm. When a child reaches for your hand without hesitation, or an animal curls up beside you with ease, it is not a coincidence. It is an acknowledgement of something pure and grounded within you. You may not always notice it, because you do not need to try for their approval, but they sense safety in you. They feel seen without being evaluated. They find calm in your quiet steadiness. In a world that demands masks and rehearsed versions of self, you offer something raw and real, something that speaks to the soul before the mind has time to interpret. This kind of energy is not created through effort. It is the byproduct of inner alignment, of emotional congruence, of a presence that has made peace with itself. Children, in their honesty, are drawn to those who make them feel safe without being controlled. Animals, in their instinct, move toward the energy that carries no hidden tension. When they find you, they are responding to something sacred, something untouched by pretense, something deeper than any spoken word. You might have dismissed this before, seeing it as ordinary or just part of your nature, but what you carry is rare and radiant in a world that has become so loud in its striving. To have the trust of the most sensitive beings is no small thing. It is a reflection of your emotional clarity, your gentleness, your truthfulness without agenda. You are not demanding love. You are simply embodying what love feels like in its most grounded form. It shows in the way children relax around you, the way animals lean into your presence without flinching. They are not analyzing you. They are responding to your frequency. This is a form of attractiveness that needs no validation because it is already known in the realm of the instinctual, already affirmed by the most intuitive parts of nature. It is not loud. It is not theatrical, but it is deeply felt and impossible to fake, and it remains one of the clearest signs that who you are beneath everything is both beautiful and profoundly magnetic. There's something unspoken in the way people seek your opinion, even when you haven't positioned yourself as an authority. Something in the way they wait for your reaction before settling into their own. You might find that others often look to you in uncertain moments, that your quiet responses carry weight, that your silence is noticed just as much as your words. This influence does not come from trying to persuade or lead. It comes from the quiet integrity you hold, the consistency between what you feel, think, and do. People trust you not because you are always right, but because you are always real. That kind of internal congruence radiates out in ways you may not even be aware of. It's felt in the way you make decisions without posturing, in the way you speak with intention rather than noise, in the way you remain rooted, even when others sway with the wind. That calm, centered energy becomes a compass for those who have lost their own. You might not seek the spotlight, and yet you find yourself holding space for others when they're unsure of themselves. They turn to you not for performance, but for presence, not for answers, but for clarity. There is something inherently attractive about a person who does not need to prove anything, someone who is not trying to impress, but simply lives aligned with their own values. This kind of steadiness is rare in a world addicted to validation, and people sense its power even when they don't consciously understand it. They feel safer around you, more honest around you, more reflective around you, not because you demand it, but because your being invites it. You create a field of authenticity that challenges falsehood without needing to fight it. That is magnetic. It's why people remember your words, why your quiet advice lands deeper than loud opinions, why your absence is felt in ways others' presence sometimes isn't. And so that's why, when the world feels like it's crumbling around, you hold a kind of emotional weight that draws others in, not to be impressed, but to feel real again. And that, more than charm, more than charisma, more than anything visible, is the kind of attractiveness that changes people and lingers in the parts of them they didn't know were still listening. There is a unique kind of presence you carry when you are not constantly seeking to be understood, when you no longer need to explain every part of yourself for the comfort of others, when your worth is no longer measured by how easily digestible you are. You've learned, perhaps through trial or solitude or quiet observation, that real connection does not come from being easily known, but from being deeply felt. There is something quietly magnetic in the way you move, without asking for permission, in the way you allow space between yourself and others without fear, in the way you no longer force closeness, but allow it to unfold naturally. This signals to people that you are not driven by fear of abandonment or neediness masked as charm, but by a deep respect for your own energy and a calm reverence for the boundaries that protect it. That kind of self-containment is deeply attractive because it's so rare. Most are trying to merge too quickly, trying to fill space instead of inhabiting it. But you, in your restraint, in your slowness, in your willingness to let others come toward you rather than chasing connection, create a gravitational pull that cannot be manufactured. It is not arrogance, it is not detachment. It is the lived truth that you do not need to be everything to everyone to be loved. People may feel more drawn to you when you are quiet than when you try to express yourself fully, not because you are withholding, but because your energy invites reflection, not consumption. You do not force others to see you, you allow them the choice, and in that choice, they often find themselves choosing to stay, choosing to listen more closely, choosing to wonder what lies beneath the surface you do not rush to reveal. You do not make your soul easy to access, and yet there is a warmth that surrounds you, not loud, but undeniable. It's the warmth of someone who has nothing to prove and everything to offer, someone who no longer trades their truth for approval. And this quiet, unwavering authenticity not only sets you apart, it makes people feel more awake in your presence without understanding why. That is not just a trait, it is a force, and it is one of the clearest signs that you are deeply, undeniably attractive, even if you cannot yet see it yourself. There is a kind of glow that surrounds you when you are deeply engaged with your own inner world, when your curiosity leads you not outward toward validation, but inward toward understanding, when your energy is invested in things that nourish your mind and spirit, rather than just your image. You may not realize it, but when you are immersed in something you love, when you speak about an idea that has moved you, when you lose track of time in the flow of your own creativity or contemplation, you radiate a different kind of light. It is not the surface glow that comes from being seen, but the quiet fire that comes from being fully alive within yourself. People notice this, even if they can't name it. They sense the richness of your inner life, the thoughtfulness in your observations, the passion in your focus. You are attractive not because you are always trying to be, but because you are already full, already lit from within by something sincere. The world is full of those who seek attention without depth, noise without substance. And when someone like you appears, someone who carries meaning, someone who is not afraid to be curious, someone who finds joy in learning or stillness or creating, it leaves a lasting impression. You become magnetic, not for how loudly you speak, for how deeply you feel, for how genuinely you care, for how clearly your attention is placed on things that matter to you. That kind of presence is felt in the way you listen, without distraction, in the way your eyes light up when your thoughts begin to unfold, in the way you are not trying to entertain, but simply express. Others are drawn to this, not always knowing why, only feeling that being near you awakens something in them they've forgotten how to reach. Your intelligence is not loud, your depth is not performative, and your passion is not staged. It is simply lived, and in a world starved for authenticity, that becomes one of the most beautiful things a person can witness. This is why you may find others watching you when you are lost in thought, why they linger in conversations that seem simple, why they feel stirred by your presence, even if you've barely spoken. What they are feeling is not your performance, but your essence, and it is rare, and it is real. There's a specific type of attraction that lives in your resilience, in the way you've learned to carry yourself through pain without bitterness, in the way your scars do not speak of defeat, but of survival with grace. You don't need to tell your whole story for people to sense that you've been through something, for the quiet strength in your presence often says more than words ever could. There's a calmness in your demeanor that doesn't come from ease, but from having navigated storms and returned wiser, softer, clearer. People are drawn to this even when they don't understand why, because the strength you carry is not the kind that demands attention, it's the kind that makes others feel safe without needing to control. You've learned not to harden yourself as protection, but to refine your boundaries, not to close your heart, but to guard it wisely. That balance between vulnerability and discernment, between openness and self-respect, is deeply compelling. It shows up in your eyes, in the pauses between your words, in the way you choose to respond rather than react. You may have once thought your sensitivity made you weak, but in truth, it's your ability to stay present in your tenderness while still moving forward that makes you magnetic. This is not the kind of beauty that fades with time. It deepens, because what people feel around you is not surface charm, but the radiance of someone who has faced themselves and come back whole. Even in silence, people feel your steadiness, your emotional intelligence, your quiet authority that says, "I have suffered and I have not been broken." You bring peace, not because your life has been peaceful, but because you've made peace with yourself. That energy changes the atmosphere, makes people want to soften in your presence, to be more honest, to lay down their own armor, and while they may not know the details of your past, they feel the depth of it, the texture of who you are, and it draws them in. Not out of pity, not out of curiosity, but out of a deep resonance with something they recognize in themselves, but rarely see reflected in others. You've turned your pain into presence, and that is a form of beauty no one can ever take from you. You often find yourself alone without feeling lonely, not because you don't enjoy company, but because your solitude has become a sanctuary, not a sentence. There's a quiet confidence in the way you move through the world without constantly needing others to affirm your choices or soothe your uncertainties. You've learnt to enjoy your own presence, to sit with your thoughts without needing to escape them, to find comfort in silence rather than dread. That kind of self-possession is deeply attractive because it speaks to something rare: emotional independence. In a world where so many are seeking distraction, where noise is mistaken for connection and constant interaction for intimacy, your ability to be at peace, alone, is both mysterious and grounding. People sense this steadiness in you, even when you're not trying to reveal it. It's in the way you don't chase attention, in the way you listen more than you speak, in the way your energy doesn't grasp, it allows. And because you do not depend on external validation, your presence becomes a mirror for those who do. Some may feel drawn to your quiet power, others may feel uneasy around it, but all will notice it. You are not detached. You care, you feel, you love, but you do so without losing yourself. You offer connection from a place of fullness, not lack. That is why people are often surprised by how deeply they feel seen by you, how much they crave your attention, even though you give it with such restraint. You know how to hold space without losing your center, how to be present without performing, how to share your heart without making it someone else's responsibility. This balance between connection and independence creates a gravitational field that pulls people in gently, without force, because it allows them to feel free in your presence rather than bound. You don't need to be the loudest in the room to be remembered, because what lingers about you isn't what you do, but how you are. Your ability to be alone is not a barrier to intimacy, it is a foundation for it. And in that foundation lies a beauty that is felt before it is seen, a presence that touches others not through effort, but simply by being rooted in itself. To believe in your attractiveness is not to be vain. It is to recognize your essence, to honor the magnetism of your truth, and to let go of borrowed standards. You are not made to shine by comparison, but by alignment with who you truly are. You do not need to become more to be worthy. You simply need to see what already is. Let the world catch up to the beauty you've quietly carried all along.